The trading floor usually sounds like controlled chaos. Keyboards clicking, phones ringing, traders shouting numbers across the room. But today it smelled like expensive cologne and unearned confidence. I stood at the edge of my empire, 37 monitors glowing green and red, $400 million moving through fiber optic cables every hour. Blackwood Capital Management, the hedge fund I built from a folding table in my apartment 14 years ago. We didn't just manage money, we made money reproduce. Pension funds, endowments, family offices with more zeros than a phone number. When someone needed their wealth to work harder than they ever did, they called us. I wasn't just the CEO. I was the chief investment officer who wrote our flagship algorithm at 2 a.m. while surviving on instant noodles and desperation. The same algorithm that had generated $11.3 billion in returns over the last decade. Today, I was reviewing our quarterly risk assessment, running stress tests on our bond portfolio, the kind of work that doesn't make headlines but keeps fortunes from evaporating. I was wearing my working clothes, a wrinkled Oxford shirt with the sleeves rolled up, reading glasses that cost $12 from the drugstore, hair pulled back in a clip because I hadn't had time to wash it since Monday. No designer suit, no statement jewelry, no 4-inch heels. To the untrained eye, I looked like the back office accountant who reconciles the expense reports. To anyone who actually understood this industry, I looked like the woman who could move markets with a single phone call. Then I heard him. The elevator doors opening with a cheerful ding, followed by a voice that sounded like it had been raised on champagne and shielded from consequences. Why is it so loud in here? Don't these people know how to use inside voices? The voice cut through the trading floor noise like a knife through butter. It was Preston. Preston Whitmore IV, the 31-year-old son of the private equity titan whose family office held a significant but minority stake in my fund. Preston, who thought alpha was just a Greek letter. He came strolling onto the trading floor, Italian loafers clicking against the hardwood, holding a tumbler of scotch despite it being 9:30 in the morning. His suit probably cost more than my first year's salary. His watch definitely did. His haircut looked like it required an appointment 3 months in advance. He stopped when he saw me hunched over a Bloomberg terminal, spreadsheets scattered around me like fallen leaves. He didn't look at my face. He looked at the wrinkled shirt. He looked at the drugstore glasses. He looked at the coffee stain on my sleeve from the 6 a.m. risk meeting. "Hey, you," he said, snapping his fingers twice. "Secretary, admin, whatever you are." I didn't look up immediately. I finished calculating the delta on our options positions, watched the numbers align into the pattern I expected, and then slowly removed my glasses. "Can I help you, Preston?" He blinked, clearly surprised that the hired help knew his name. To him, I was just furniture. A piece of office equipment with a pulse. "Oh, you know who I am, excellent. That saves time." He took a theatrical sip of his scotch. "I need the conference room prepped for a meeting at 11, the big one with the view, and get me a fresh pot of coffee. None of that break room swill. The good stuff." He gestured vaguely toward the kitchen. "And clear my calendar with whoever handles scheduling around here. I have a presentation for the Goldman team, and I need complete focus." He actually emphasized the word focus like it was a foreign concept to the rest of us. I let 3 heartbeats pass in silence. "I don't handle scheduling. Preston?" His face twitched. The micro-expression of someone who has never been told no. His entire existence was built on the assumption that every request was pre-approved. "Excuse me." He stepped closer, invading my space with the scent of single malt and entitlement. "Do you have any idea who my father is?" "I'm aware." "Then you know I'm not asking. I'm instructing." He jabbed a manicured finger toward my chest. "Get the room ready, or I'll have you terminated before the market closes. There are 1,000 secretaries who would kill to work at Blackwood." Secretary. The word hung in the recycled air like poison. I looked at his finger. Then I looked at his face, his smooth, pampered, never missed a meal face. My heart didn't break. My pride didn't crumble. Instead, a cold, precise clarity washed over me. The same feeling I get when I spot a mispriced asset that the entire market has overlooked. It wasn't anger, it was opportunity. I realized in that moment that Preston didn't know. He genuinely had no idea that I owned 54% of this fund. He didn't know I managed the portfolios he was trying to impress people with. He didn't even know my name. His father, Theodore Whitmore, the patriarch of Whitmore Family Holdings, handled the high-level relationships. Preston was just a placeholder, a title we created to keep him away from anything involving actual numbers. He had no idea he was poking a lioness in her own den. Before I tell you how I systematically dismantled this man's career, his trust fund access, and quite possibly his relationship with his entire family, do me a quick favor. If you enjoy stories about silver spoon heirs getting absolutely demolished by the women they dismiss as secretaries, hit that subscribe button. It feeds my cold, calculating soul. And trust me, you're going to want to see what happens when this house of cards collapses. Now, where was I? Right. Preston Whitmore IV was about to learn a very expensive lesson about finance. And respect. Let me take you back 4 months, when this disaster started brewing. I'm Victoria Chen. I'm the founder and chief investment officer of Blackwood Capital Management. The title sounds glamorous. But really, I'm a glorified number cruncher who hasn't slept through the night since 2011 and speaks in spreadsheets. My job is simple. I take money and I make it grow. I study markets like a surgeon studies anatomy. I find opportunities that others miss. I protect portfolios from crashes that would wipe out retirement dreams. For 14 years, I've been the invisible engine behind generational wealth. Not flashy, not famous, but profitable. The office smells like fresh coffee, printer toner, and the faint anxiety of people whose bonuses depend on basis points. While the rest of Wall Street is obsessed with headlines and hot takes, I'm here in the trenches making sure the math actually works. I'm the reason pension funds can pay retirees. I'm the reason university endowments can fund scholarships. I'm the reason the Whitmore family's portfolio has doubled in 6 years. And I'm the only person with signatory authority on our prime brokerage accounts. Let me explain why that matters. In finance, money doesn't just sit in a vault. It moves constantly. Every trade we make flows through our prime broker, Goldman Sachs. In our case, they hold our securities, settle our transactions, provide leverage for our positions. But here's the thing most people don't understand. Prime brokerage relationships are personal. They're not with the company. They're with specific individuals who have passed licensing exams, background checks, and regulatory approvals. I hold the Series 7, Series 63, Series 65, and Series 24 licenses. I passed the CFA exam on my first attempt. I'm personally registered with FINRA as the principal of Blackwood Capital. Without my licenses, Blackwood cannot legally execute trades. Without my signature, money cannot move. Without my personal authorization, the entire fund is frozen. The Whitmore family owns 18% of Blackwood. They invested $60 million 5 years ago. Good money, useful capital. Fair terms at the time. But Theodore Whitmore didn't buy controlling interest. He bought a minority stake with no operational authority. The problem was, Theodore came with excess baggage. And that baggage had a name and a ridiculous numeral. Preston Whitmore IV wasn't born. He was manufactured, assembled in a factory that produces entitled heirs with strong jawlines and weak work ethics. You know the type. Boarding school pedigree, Ivy League legacy admission, and a fundamental inability to understand that money should be earned, not inherited. He floated into our fund on a wave of family obligation. His first week, he asked why we couldn't just print more shares when a position went against us. I had to explain that we weren't the Federal Reserve. His second week, he suggested we should invest in his fraternity brother's cryptocurrency startup. The startup was literally called Mooncoin and had no white paper. His third week, he tried to expense a $14,000 bottle of wine as a client development cost. The client was his ex-girlfriend. My head of compliance, Margaret, came to my office after that incident. Margaret has been with me for 11 years. She started as an intern, and now she runs our entire risk management operation, sharp as a scalpel, loyal as a Labrador. "Victoria," she said, closing the door behind her. "We have a Preston problem." "I know." "He's asking junior analysts for login credentials. He's requesting access to trading systems he has no business seeing. Yesterday he told our head trader that he wanted to take the wheel on a $100 million bond position." I rubbed my temples. What did Marcus say? Marcus Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname. He's my head trader, been with Blackwood for 9 years. Former Marine, discipline carved into his bones. The kind of person who runs toward problems instead of away from them. Marcus told him that the wheel was attached to a vehicle he wasn't licensed to drive. Preston threatened to have him fired. Of course he did. Margaret sat down across from me. Her face was serious. The face she makes when she's about to deliver bad news. "There's more. I've been monitoring his email activity. Standard compliance procedure." She slid a folder across my desk. "Preston has been communicating with his father about restructuring Blackwood. They want to push you out and install Preston as managing director. Theodore is lining up board votes." I opened the folder, read the emails, felt my blood cool to ice water. The phrases jumped out at me. Legacy leadership. Time for fresh perspective. The old guard needs to step aside. And my personal favorite, from Preston himself. Once we get the Chen woman out, I can finally run this place like a real business instead of a math camp. Math camp. 14 years of outperforming the S&P 500, 11.3 billion in generated returns. A track record that made grown men weep with envy. Math camp. I closed the folder, looked at Margaret. When is Theodore planning to make his move? The quarterly investor meeting. 3 weeks from now. They're going to present a strategic reorganization proposal. It's essentially a hostile takeover disguised as governance reform. And the other board members, Margaret's face darkened. Theodore has been making calls, promising favors. 2 of the independent directors are wavering. I sat back in my chair, let the information settle. The thing about being a woman on Wall Street for 2 decades is you develop a very specific skill set, not just analysis or trading or relationship management, patience. The patience of a chess grandmaster who sees the entire board. The patience of a sniper waiting for the perfect shot. The patience of someone who has been underestimated so many times that she's turned it into a weapon. Preston Whitmore IV didn't know what he had just started, but I did. "Margaret," I said quietly, "I need you to pull every communication Preston has sent from company systems, every email, every message, every file he's accessed. Already done. I need a complete audit of his expense reports, on your desk by tomorrow. And I need you to schedule a meeting with our legal counsel, quietly." Margaret nodded. She understood. "One more thing," I said. "The quarterly investor meeting. I want it moved to our main conference floor. Full presentation setup. Invite everyone. Goldman, Morgan, the pension fund managers, the press. The press. If Preston wants to put on a show, saying, we'll give him the biggest stage possible." Margaret stood up, a thin smile crossing her face. "I'll make the arrangements." After she left, I sat alone in my office for a long time. The trading floor hummed outside my window. $400 million flowing through the arteries of global commerce. My creation, my responsibility, my legacy. And they wanted to take it from me because I wasn't flashy enough, because I didn't golf with the right people, because I had the audacity to be female and successful in a world that expected me to fail. I picked up my phone and dialed a number from memory. "Goldman Prime Services, how may I direct your call?" "This is Victoria Chen at Blackwood Capital. I need to speak with my coverage representative. It's about updating our signatory documentation. There was a brief pause. Then a voice I recognized. Victoria. This is James. What can I do for you? James Morrison, our Goldman relationship manager for the past 8 years. Good man. Understood how the game was really played. James, I need to review our account authorizations. Specifically, I want to confirm who is listed as having trading authority. Of course. Give me a moment. Keyboard clicks on his end. Okay, I'm looking at the account now. Primary signatory is Victoria Chen. Secondary authorization requires dual signature from Victoria Chen and Margaret Walsh, your compliance officer. No one else is listed with individual trading authority. Perfect. I want to add a notation to the account. Any attempt to add new signatories or modify authorization structure requires in-person verification with 2 forms of ID. That's unusually restrictive. May I ask why? Internal security measures. We've had some concerning access attempts. Understood. I'll flag the account immediately. Anything else? Yes. If anyone contacts Goldman claiming to represent Blackwood and requesting changes to our account structure, I want to be notified personally, day or night. There was a pause. James was smart enough to read between the lines. Consider it done. Victoria, and good luck. Thanks, James. I have a feeling I'm going to need it. I hung up. The trap was being set. Now I just needed Preston to walk into it. He didn't disappoint. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched Preston prepare for his coup. He hired a consultant to create a presentation about modernizing Blackwood's investment approach. He scheduled meetings with board members, always conveniently forgetting to include me. He told anyone who would listen that the fund was underperforming its potential. Our actual returns that quarter were 14.7%. The S&P 500 returned 8%. But facts never mattered much to Preston. The day before the investor meeting, he made his biggest mistake. He walked into Marcus's office unannounced and demanded the trading terminal passwords. Marcus, bless his disciplined heart, did exactly what I told him to do. I'm not authorized to share those credentials. Mr. Whitmore, I'm a board member's son. I have every right to access these systems. With respect, sir, board affiliation doesn't grant trading authority. That requires licensing and compliance approval. Preston's face turned red, the color of a man not used to being told no by people he considered beneath him. My father owns 18% of this fund. Your father is a limited partner. Limited partners don't have operational access. That's what limited means. I was watching from my office window, saw Preston lean in close to Marcus, saw him say something that made Marcus's jaw tighten. Later, Marcus told me what it was. When I'm running this place next month, you'll be lucky to get a job parking cars. Marcus had served 2 tours in Afghanistan. He'd been shot at by people who actually meant it. A trust fund baby in loafers didn't even register as a threat. Looking forward to it, sir, Marcus replied calmly. In the meantime, please step away from the trading floor. This area is restricted to licensed personnel. Preston stormed out, called his father, demanded that the timeline be accelerated. Theodore Whitmore moved the vote up by a week. The investor meeting was now in 5 days. They thought they were catching me off guard. They were wrong. The morning of the meeting, I arrived at the office at 5 a.m. The trading floor was silent, just me and the blinking monitors, green numbers, red numbers, the pulse of capitalism before the market opened. I made myself a cup of coffee, black, no sugar, the way I've taken it since my first internship. I thought about the journey that led to this moment. The summer after college, when I applied to 47 firms and got 46 rejections. The first job at a regional bank making barely enough to cover rent. The years of 18-hour days building expertise that no one could take away. Every man who assumed I was the assistant. Every meeting where my ideas were credited to someone else. Every time I was told the numbers didn't lie, only to watch someone lie about the numbers. All of it fuel. All of it preparation. I sat at my desk and reviewed my preparations one final time. The files were organized. The evidence was documented. The trap was ready. Margaret arrived at 6, Marcus at 6:30. By 7, my entire senior team was assembled in my office. Today is going to be interesting, I said. Define interesting, Marcus replied. Preston and Theodore are going to try to remove me as CIO. They've been building a coalition for months. They think they have the votes. The room was silent. But they've made a fundamental miscalculation. They think this is a political fight, a popularity contest. They don't understand how this industry actually works. I stood up, walked to the window overlooking the trading floor. In finance, control isn't about board seats. It's about licenses. It's about regulatory authority. It's about who can legally sign the documents that move money. I turned back to my team. Theodore Whitmore can vote however he wants. He can install Preston as King of England for all I care. But without my signature, without my licenses, without my personal authorization, Blackwood Capital cannot execute a single trade. Margaret nodded slowly. You're going to shut it down. Not shut down, pause. Until certain conditions are met. Marcus leaned forward. What conditions? The Whitmores will have a choice. Accept my continued leadership, or watch their $60 million investment become completely illiquid. No trades, no redemptions, no returns. Just a frozen asset gathering dust while regulators ask uncomfortable questions. The room was quiet. Then Marcus smiled. The smile of a soldier who recognizes a perfectly executed ambush. That's beautiful, boss. Cold as ice and twice as sharp. I learned from the best, I said. The market doesn't care about bloodlines. It only cares about results. The investors began arriving at 9. Goldman representatives in their perfect suits, pension fund managers checking their phones, family office representatives making small talk over the breakfast spread, and Theodore Whitmore, silver-haired and imperial, taking his seat at the head of the table like he owned the place, which, I reminded myself, he did not. Preston entered last. Of course he did. Theatrical timing was probably the only thing he'd ever learned. He was wearing a suit that cost more than some cars. His hair was perfectly styled. His smile was the practiced smile of someone who'd been told his whole life that confidence was the same as competence. He didn't acknowledge me as he passed. To him, I was already gone. A soon-to-be memory. The meeting was called to order. Theodore stood to speak. Thank you all for joining us today. We have some important announcements about the future direction of Blackwood Capital. He clicked a remote. A presentation appeared on the screen behind him. Blackwood 2.0, a new era of leadership. I almost laughed. Almost. As many of you know, Victoria Chen has been an instrumental part of Blackwood's history. Her contributions have been valuable. The pause before valuable was deliberate, dismissive. However, the board believes it's time for fresh perspective, new energy. A leader who understands modern markets and modern investors, he gestured to Preston, who stood with practiced humility. My son Preston has agreed to take on the role of managing director. He will oversee day-to-day operations while we conduct a search for a new chief investment officer. The room was silent. Not shocked silent. More like confused silent. The Goldman representative raised her hand. Mr. Whitmore, just to clarify, is Ms. Chen resigning? Theodore's smile tightened. Ms. Chen will be transitioning to an advisory role. Less operational, more consultative. Has Ms. Chen agreed to this transition? All eyes turned to me. I sat perfectly still, hands folded, face neutral. No, I said calmly, I have not. The room shifted. Theodore's smile flickered. Preston's confidence cracked at the edges. Victoria, Theodore said, his voice carrying a warning. We discussed this. The board has made its decision. The board can make any decision it likes. I stood slowly. But the board doesn't run trading operations. I do. I walked to the front of the room, took my place beside the presentation screen. May I? Before Theodore could object, I connected my tablet to the display. His Blackwood 2.0 vanished, replaced by something much more interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying across the room. Before we discuss leadership transitions, I think we should discuss qualifications. I clicked to the first slide. An organizational chart appeared. Simple, clear, devastating. Blackwood Capital is a registered investment advisor under SEC regulations. As such, we're required to have licensed principals overseeing all trading activity. I highlighted my name at the top of the chart. I hold the Series 7, Series 63, Series 65, and Series 24 licenses. I am personally registered with FINRA as the managing principal of this firm. My CFA charter has been active for 12 years. I clicked to the next slide. Preston's name appeared. Beside it, a single word. None. Preston Whitmore holds no securities licenses. He has never passed a FINRA examination. He is not registered with any regulatory body. He has no legal authority to make investment decisions. The Goldman representative leaned forward. Her eyes narrowed. Ms. Chen, are you saying that Mr. Whitmore cannot legally serve as managing director? I'm saying that if Mr. Whitmore attempts to exercise operational control over this fund, we will be in immediate violation of SEC regulations. Our prime brokerage agreement would be terminated. Our trading capabilities would be suspended. $400 million in client assets would be frozen pending regulatory review. The room erupted. Pension fund managers checking their phones. Family office representatives turning to their legal counsel. Theodore Whitmore's face cycling through shades of red I didn't know existed. That's absurd, Preston spat. I'm not trying to be a trader. I'm overseeing strategy. Strategy that involves trading decisions requires licensed supervision. I kept my voice level. Every position we take, every hedge we implement, every rebalancing we execute must be approved by a registered principal. That's me, not you. And I clicked to the next slide. But let's talk about strategy for a moment, specifically your strategy. Preston's emails appeared on the screen, the ones Margaret had been collecting for months. On February 3rd, you emailed 3 junior analysts requesting their login credentials. Compliance flagged this as a potential security breach. Click. On February 15th, you attempted to access our trading platform using credentials belonging to Marcus Chen, our head trader. The system logged 17 failed attempts before locking the account. Click. On March 2nd, you emailed your father discussing plans to, and I quote, get the Chen woman out and run this place like a real business instead of a math camp. The room was silent. Preston had gone pale. On March 10th, you contacted 3 of our competitors about potential acquisition interest. You shared confidential performance data without authorization. That's a violation of our partnership agreement and potentially securities fraud. Theodore stood up abruptly. This is a setup. Those emails are fabricated. Every communication is logged and archived by our compliance system. Margaret spoke from her seat, voice steady. The records are time-stamped, cryptographically verified, and available for regulatory review. They're also already in the hands of our legal counsel. Theodore's face went gray. The same gray I'd seen on Preston in the server room. The color of someone watching their plans collapse in real time. Furthermore, I continued, I've been in contact with our prime broker at Goldman Sachs. As of this morning, all account authorizations have been verified and locked. Any attempt to modify signatory authority requires my personal, In-person approval with 2 forms of identification. I looked directly at Theodore. You cannot remove me. You cannot replace me. You cannot operate around me. Without my licenses and my signature, Blackwood Capital is a building full of computers that cannot legally execute a single trade. The Goldman representative stood up. Mr. Whitmore, we need to discuss your family's continued involvement with this fund. Immediately. This is outrageous, Preston shouted, his composure finally shattering. She's holding the fund hostage. My father owns 18%. Your father owns 18% of a fund that cannot function without me. I turned to face him directly. That's not ownership, Preston. That's a passenger seat. And you just tried to grab the wheel without knowing how to drive. The meeting descended into chaos. Lawyers huddled in corners. Investors demanded explanations. Theodore attempted damage control while Preston sulked by the window, looking like a child whose toy had been taken away. I stood at the center of it all. Calm, patient, waiting. 2 hours later, Theodore Whitmore requested a private meeting. We sat in my office, just the 2 of us, the door closed, the blinds drawn. He looked older than he had that morning, diminished. You planned this, he said. It wasn't a question. I planned for this. There's a difference. You could have warned us, handled this privately. I tried handling things privately for 6 months. Your son harassed my employees, attempted to access restricted systems, and shared confidential data with competitors. You responded by trying to push me out. Theodore was silent. I have a proposal, I said. It's the only one you're going to get. He nodded slowly. Preston resigns from all positions with Blackwood. Effective immediately. He is banned from entering this building or contacting any employee. He's my son. He's a liability wrapped in a designer suit. And if he stays, your $60 million investment becomes worthless when regulators shut us down for compliance violations. Theodore's jaw tightened. What else? You resign from the board, not as an investor, but as a director. Your capital stays in the fund. You continue to receive returns, but you have no operational authority and no vote on management decisions. That's everything. That's the minimum. The alternative is I send Margaret's files to the SEC and let them decide how to handle your son's securities violations. Sharing confidential fund data with competitors isn't just a breach of contract. It's potentially criminal. The silence stretched between us. Theodore Whitmore had built an empire on reading people, on knowing when to push and when to fold. He was reading me now, and he didn't like what he saw. Send over the paperwork, he said quietly. I'll sign. The aftermath unfolded over the next 48 hours. Hour 1, Preston Whitmore was escorted from the building by security. He left through the service entrance. No witnesses except the maintenance staff and a very amused Marcus Chen, who happened to be taking out the recycling. Needed some fresh air, Marcus told me later, grinning. Completely coincidental timing. Hour 8. The Goldman team returned for their postponed meeting. The real meeting, without the Whitmore drama. Our quarterly presentation went flawlessly. 14.7% returns. Risk-adjusted performance in the top decile. 3 new strategies ready for deployment. By the end of the day, Goldman had increased their recommended allocation to Blackwood by 40%. Hour 24. The news hit the financial press. Whitmore family exits Blackwood board amid governance restructuring. The official story was strategic realignment. The unofficial story spread through Wall Street whispers within hours. Every trading desk in Manhattan knew what had actually happened. The Chen woman had outmaneuvered the Whitmore heir so badly that his father had to personally negotiate the surrender. My phone rang constantly, requests for interviews, invitations to conferences. 3 job offers from competing funds. I declined them all. Hour 36. I received a text from an unknown number. You ruined my life. I knew who it was before I checked. Your life isn't ruined, Preston. It's just being lived on its own merits for the first time. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response. I could have felt guilty. Could have wondered if I'd been too harsh. But then I remembered his face when he snapped his fingers at me. The casual cruelty of someone who had never been told no. The absolute certainty that I was beneath him. Some people need to fall before they can learn to stand. I blocked the number. Hour 48, Thursday morning. The trading floor hummed its familiar rhythm. Keyboards, phones, numbers dancing across screens. I stood at the window of my office, watching my team work. Margaret reviewing compliance reports at her standing desk. Marcus calling out positions to his traders. Junior analysts running scenarios on their terminals. This was what Preston never understood. A fund isn't a trophy. It isn't a title you inherit. It's a living system built on trust, expertise, and thousands of small decisions made correctly. You can't buy your way into competence. You can't bluff your way past regulations. You can't charm the market into giving you returns you haven't earned. Marcus knocked on my door. Boss, you have a minute, always. He stepped inside, closed the door. I just wanted to say thanks for handling that the way you did. Handling what? Preston. The whole situation. Most people in your position would have just, I don't know, settled, taken a payout, walked away. I shook my head. Walking away wasn't an option. Not because of pride, because this fund represents 14 years of work. Hundreds of employees who depend on it. Billions of dollars entrusted to us by people who are counting on us to protect their futures. I turned back to the window. Preston saw numbers on a spreadsheet. I see retirement accounts, college funds, pension obligations. Real people whose lives get better or worse based on decisions made in this building. Marcus nodded slowly. For what it's worth, the team knows. Everyone knows what you did, what you risked. I didn't risk anything. I prepared. There's a difference. He smiled. That rare Marcus smile that surfaces maybe twice a year. Same thing you said about the 2008 crisis and the 2020 crash, and every other time someone underestimated you. I'm consistent. You're terrifying. In the best possible way. He left. I sat back down at my desk, opened my email. 200 unread messages since yesterday. The work never stopped. That was the job. That was the privilege. Some people run from responsibility. I've spent my entire career running toward it. Preston Whitmore is currently living in his father's guest house in Connecticut. His social media went dark after the incident. I heard through the grapevine that he's exploring entrepreneurial opportunities. Last month, he launched a financial literacy podcast. It has 47 subscribers. Most of them are bots. Theodore Whitmore remains an investor in Blackwood Capital. We send him quarterly reports like everyone else. He has not requested a meeting or made any public statements. His $60 million investment is now worth $94 million. He's welcome. The fund is performing better than ever. New investors, new strategies, new opportunities. The kind of growth that happens when leadership is stable and focused. Last quarter, we returned at 19.2%. The S&P 500 returned 11. Our Sharpe ratio is the highest it's been in 5 years. Margaret got promoted to Chief Compliance Officer. She earned it 10 times over. Marcus is training a new generation of traders, teaching them discipline, patience, risk management, the things you can't learn from a textbook or a famous last name. The junior analyst that Preston tried to bully into sharing credentials, she just passed her Series 7 on the first attempt. I sent her flowers and a note. Welcome to the club. I'm still here. Still in my wrinkled Oxford shirts and drugstore glasses, Still arriving before dawn and leaving after dark. Still making the math work. That's the thing about Wall Street that Preston never understood. The market doesn't care about your last name. It doesn't care about your connections or your clothes or your confidence. It only cares about results. And results require work. Real work. The kind of work that doesn't photograph well or trend on social media. I spent 14 years building something that works. Something that generates returns and creates jobs and protects wealth. Preston spent 31 years assuming he deserved to run it. The market made the correction. That's what people forget about finance. It's not about who you know. It's not about where you went to school. It's not about what your father built. It's about the numbers. And the numbers don't care about your feelings. Some lessons only become clear after the trading floor goes quiet and the screens go dark. This one was worth every late night, every difficult conversation, every moment of doubt. The thing about building wealth is knowing where to put the foundations. And more importantly, knowing whose name goes on the license. I spent 14 years making sure only one person had the authority to move money. Me. Not because I'm greedy, not because I don't trust my team, but because in this industry, accountability must have a name, and that name is mine. Preston Whitmore thought he could take what I built because he had a famous surname and a wealthy father. He thought pedigree was the same as performance. He learned differently. The lesson cost him his position, his reputation, and quite possibly his relationship with his family. It cost his father a board seat and any illusion of control over a fund that has tripled his investment. Expensive education. But some people only learn from losing. I'm not gloating. That's not my style. But I am satisfied. The kind of quiet satisfaction that comes from watching a system work exactly as designed. The threat was identified. The compliance held. The licenses mattered, and the woman who did the work. She's right where she belongs. At the top. One more thing before I go. If you made it this far, if you enjoyed watching a trust fund heir get systematically outmaneuvered by someone he dismissed as a secretary, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Share this story with someone who's ever been underestimated, someone who's been told they're too quiet, too technical, too focused on details to see the big picture. Tell them the details are the big picture. Tell them expertise is irreplaceable. Tell them to keep their licenses current, and remind them that sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just watching the math work. Thanks for staying until the end. See you in the next one.